Bonjour à tous and welcome to this video on French subject pronouns. I previously had one video with all of the pronouns together, but then I thought, well, what if you don't need all of that, or what if you're not ready for all of that? So I've decided instead to make separate videos, starting with the most important pronouns. They are the subject pronouns. First of all, though, we of course need to know what a pronoun is. And quite simply, pronouns are words that replace nouns in order to avoid repetition. So for example, we could say John ate the cake and John liked the cake, but this is very repetitive, it's not very natural. Instead, you're more likely to say John ate the cake and he liked it. And here the words he and it are pronouns because they replace the nouns John and the cake respectively. But they don't serve the same purpose, hence we have different types of pronoun, and as we already know, in this video we're going to look at the subject pronoun. So what is a subject pronoun? Well, as the name suggests, it is a word that replaces the subject of a verb. The subject of a verb is the person or thing doing the action. So for example, I eat fruit. She likes golf. They play the piano. So I, she, and they are all the people doing the action in each of these sentences. And because of that, the verbs conjugate according to them. So I eat, she likes, they play. And this is very, very important in both English and French. Verbs conjugate according to the subject. And in many cases, that subject is a subject pronoun. But these aren't all of the subject pronouns. Pronouns are based on two criteria. We have person and number. There are three persons or people, however you want to say it. We have the first person, that's the speaker. The second person, that's the listener. And the third person is some other person who isn't involved. Then of course number is just singular, one, or plural, more than one. And so from this we have 6 potential subject pronouns. In English, the subject pronouns are first person singular I, second person singular you, third person singular he, she, or it, and then for the plurals, first person we, second person you or you all if we really want to distinguish singular and plural, and third person plural they. In French, it's very similar but slightly different. The first person singular is je. The second person singular is tu, but we have to be careful here because French has different levels of formality, so tu will only be used in certain situations. You use tu with friends, family members, and children, so basically people that you know well or people who are younger than you. You don't use it with people that you don't know. We'll see how to say that in a minute. The third person singular forms are il, elle, and on, so let's have a look at those in a little bit more detail. Il is he or it when it replaces a masculine word. Elle is she or it when it replaces a feminine word. And on has 2 meanings. It either means one, as in one must eat 5 portions of fruit and vegetables a day. So it's a pronoun which doesn't refer to anyone in particular, but people in general. Now in English that is quite formal, generally associated with royalty. In French though, using on to refer to people in general is very, very common. More commonly though, on is used as an informal form of we. So although on is a singular pronoun, it can be used in a plural way. That doesn't mean that the conjugation changes, but the meaning can differ slightly depending on the context. The other word for we is the first person plural nous, which is more formal than on, but is still perfectly acceptable. The second person plural pronoun is vous, but again, because of formality, we need to look at this in a little bit more detail. You use vous with groups of people regardless of the formality. So even if you're speaking to a group of friends, you will address them collectively as vous. You use it with individuals that you don't know. So for example, if you need to ask someone a question in the street, you will use vous to be polite. Or you use it with people who are in a higher hierarchical position than you. So for example, most of the time you will use vous with your boss. And finally, the third person plural forms are il and elle, where il is they for masculine or mixed groups. So even if you have 10,000 women and one man, you will use il because that is technically a mixed group. We only use elle to mean they when the group is made up entirely of women or feminine things. So let's have a look at some examples to help us. You may not be familiar with all of the verb conjugations that we're going to look at. Don't worry, the point here is just to see the subject pronouns in use. So for example, I work at the bank. Je travaille à la banque. And remember what I said at the start, the verb conjugates according to the subject. So travail here is travail because it conjugates with je. You went to the park. Tu es allé au parc. And because we're using tu, this person must be someone that we know well, i.e. a friend or family member or a child. And she was writing a book. Elle écrivait un livre. We like to dance. Nous aimons danser. This is quite formal, so in an informal situation you could also say on aime danser. And like I said before, notice that though we are using on to mean we, it doesn't use the same conjugation as nous. On always uses the same conjugation regardless of its meaning. You are very nice. This time we're talking to a group of people, so we will say vous êtes sympa, and they will see a film. Ils verront un film. So because we're using il, we know that this is either a mixed group or a group of men. So there we have French subject pronouns. They are theoretically the easiest, but they're also the most important, so it's really worth getting to know them really well. Of course, if you do have any questions, do not hesitate to ask, and as usual, à bientôt.